Hello everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today for another English listening practice session. Today we're going to work on a technique called shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to English and repeat what you hear at the same time. This technique has amazing benefits for your English learning. It helps you improve your pronunciation, your listening comprehension, and your speaking fluency all at once. Shadowing also helps you develop natural rhythm and intonation in English. Many language experts consider it one of the most effective ways to sound more like a native speaker. As we go through today's story, I encourage you to pause after each sentence and try to repeat it out loud. Don't worry about being perfect. The goal is to practice and improve gradually. Now let me tell you a little bit about today's story. Eleanor, a 32-year-old art restorer in Philadelphia, discovers her identical face painted in a centuries-old portrait, hidden beneath another painting. When a mysterious descendant of the original artist arrives with shocking family secrets, Eleanor must confront the truth about her own identity and the impossible connection that spans generations. Ready? Let's dive into the story.
My name is Eleanor Mitchell. I am 32 years old. I work as an art restorer in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have spent the last 8 years of my life bringing old paintings back to life in a small studio downtown. I thought I knew everything about my work until last Tuesday morning. I was working on a painting from the 1800s when something impossible happened. Something that made me question everything I believed about my own life. The painting belonged to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It showed a woman in a blue dress standing by a window. The paint was cracking badly. I needed to clean years of dirt and old varnish from the surface. This was normal work for me. I had done this hundreds of times before. But this painting was different. I had been working on it for 3 days when I noticed something strange. There seemed to be another image underneath the blue dress lady. Sometimes old artists painted over their previous work to save money on canvas. I decided to remove the top layer carefully to see what was hidden beneath. What I found changed everything. I live alone in a small apartment near my studio. I make tea every morning at 7. I eat the same breakfast every day. I walk to work along the same streets. My life has always been quiet and predictable. I liked it that way. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. I have no brothers or sisters. I have no family photos or old letters. I have always felt like I was floating through life without roots or connections to the past. Art restoration gave me purpose. It made me feel useful. But on Tuesday morning, my predictable life ended forever. I was using a special solvent to remove paint when the woman in blue started to disappear. Slowly, another face appeared underneath. The new face was clearer, more detailed. The artist had painted it with incredible skill and love. The woman in the hidden portrait had dark hair like mine. She had the same green eyes. She had the same small scar above her left eyebrow that I got from falling off my bike when I was 7 years old. I was looking at my own face painted over 200 years ago. I stopped breathing for several seconds. My hands started shaking. I put down my brush and stepped away from the painting. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I thought I was losing my mind. I called my assistant Maria and asked her to come look at the painting. Maria had worked with art for 30 years. She knew how to spot fake paintings and optical illusions. Maria looked at the portrait for a long time. She looked at my face. She looked back at the portrait. She told me she had never seen anything like it in her entire career. She said the resemblance was impossible to explain. That afternoon, I could not focus on any other work. I kept staring at the hidden portrait. The woman in the painting was wearing a simple white dress. She was holding a small silver locket. Her expression was sad but hopeful, as if she was waiting for someone important. I decided to research the painting's history. The museum records showed it came from the estate of a family named Blackwood. The original artist was listed as Thomas Blackwood, who lived from 1798 to 1876. He had painted many portraits of wealthy Philadelphia families. I spent the evening at the library reading about the Blackwood family. Thomas Blackwood had been a successful portrait artist. He had married a woman named Catherine in 1823. They had had several children. The family had owned a large house in Center City, Philadelphia. But I could not find any information about the woman in the hidden portrait. The next morning, I arrived at my studio early. I wanted to continue uncovering the portrait. As I worked, I noticed small details I had missed before. The woman was wearing a wedding ring on her right hand instead of her left. This was unusual for American women in the 1800s. Around 10 in the morning, someone knocked on my studio door. I was not expecting any visitors. I opened the door and saw a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He was holding an old leather briefcase. The man introduced himself as Dr. James Blackwood. He said he was a professor of American history at the University of Pennsylvania. He told me he was the great-great-grandson of Thomas Blackwood, the artist who had painted the portrait I was restoring. Dr. Blackwood explained that he had heard about my discovery from a friend who worked at the museum. He said he had some information that might interest me. He asked if he could see the portrait. I led him to my work table. When Dr. Blackwood saw the hidden portrait, his face went completely pale. He sat down in my chair and stared at the painting for several minutes without speaking. Finally, he opened his briefcase and took out an old wooden box. Inside the box were letters, photographs, and documents that looked very old. He told me these papers had belonged to his family for over 150 years. Dr. Blackwood showed me a letter written by Thomas Blackwood in 1847. The letter was addressed to someone named Margaret. In the letter, Thomas wrote about painting a portrait of a young Irish woman who had worked as a governess for wealthy families in Philadelphia. The letter said the Irish woman had been forced to leave her position suddenly. She had been pregnant and unmarried. This was a scandal in the 1840s. Thomas had helped her find a safe place to live until her baby was born. Thomas had painted her portrait as a gift before she disappeared. He had never seen her again. According to the letter, the woman had planned to travel west to start a new life. She had never told anyone her real last name. Dr. Blackwood showed me another document. It was a birth record from 1847. The record showed that an Irish woman named Margaret had given birth to a baby girl in a small town outside Philadelphia. The father was listed as unknown. The baby's name was Catherine Eleanor. My middle name is Eleanor. My grandmother's name was Catherine. Dr. Blackwood told me he had spent years researching his family history. He said Thomas Blackwood had kept detailed records of everyone he had painted. Thomas had written that Margaret looked exactly like his own grandmother, who had also been Irish. According to Dr. Blackwood's research, many Irish families had unusual genetic patterns. Sometimes children or grandchildren would look exactly like distant relatives they had never met. This happened more often in families from small Irish villages where people had intermarried for generations. Dr. Blackwood asked me about my family background. I told him I knew very little about my ancestors. My parents had never talked about their families. I had always assumed they had no interesting history to share. He asked me if I had any old documents or family items. I told him about a small box of papers my mother had left me. I had never looked through it carefully. It was stored in my bedroom closet. That evening, I went home and found my mother's box. Inside were immigration papers, birth certificates, and marriage documents. One paper showed that my great-great-grandmother had been born in Ireland in 1847. Her name was Catherine Eleanor Murphy. The birth date matched exactly with the record Dr. Blackwood had shown me. I realized that Margaret, the Irish woman in the portrait, had been my great-great-grandmother. She had given her daughter the names Catherine Eleanor. My family had carried those names forward through 4 generations. I called Dr. Blackwood and told him about the documents. He was not surprised. He said he had suspected we might be related when he first saw my face next to the portrait. The next day, Dr. Blackwood brought more family papers to my studio. He showed me that Thomas Blackwood had continued to help Irish immigrants throughout his life. He had painted many portraits for people who could not afford to pay him. He had kept detailed records because he hoped the families might someday want to reclaim their portraits. Dr. Blackwood told me that Thomas had hidden Margaret's portrait under another painting to protect her reputation. In the 1840s, having an unmarried pregnant woman in your house was considered shameful. Thomas had not wanted to cause problems for Margaret's daughter. He had written in his journal that someday, Margaret's family might return to Philadelphia. He wanted to make sure they could find the portrait if they came looking for their history. Over the next week, Dr. Blackwood and I worked together to uncover the complete portrait. As we removed more layers of paint, we found that Thomas had written a message along the bottom edge of the canvas. The message was in Irish Gaelic. It said, "For Catherine Eleanor and all who come after her." Dr. Blackwood arranged for a translator to help us understand other Irish words Thomas had written around the portrait's frame. The words were blessings for health, happiness, and safe journeys. Thomas had painted Margaret wearing a silver locket because she had told him it contained a picture of her own mother, who had died in Ireland. Margaret had planned to give the locket to her daughter someday. Dr. Blackwood asked me if I had ever owned a silver locket. I remembered that my mother had worn a small silver necklace every day. After she died, I had put it away because it made me too sad to look at it. I went home and found my mother's necklace in my jewelry box. It was a silver locket, exactly like the one in the portrait. I had never tried to open it because the clasp seemed stuck. Dr. Blackwood helped me open the locket carefully. Inside was a tiny photograph of a woman with dark hair and green eyes. She looked remarkably like the woman in Thomas Blackwood's portrait. The photograph was very old, probably from the 1880s or 1890s. On the back, someone had written Catherine Eleanor Murphy, age 40, in faded ink. This was my great-great-grandmother, Margaret's daughter. She had kept her mother's locket and passed it down through our family. My mother had worn it without knowing its real significance. Dr. Blackwood told me he wanted to help me research more of my family history. He said the Blackwood family had kept records of many Irish families who had lived in Philadelphia in the 1800s. He also told me that Thomas Blackwood's house was still standing in Center City. It had been turned into apartments, but the original art studio was preserved as a historical site. He asked if I would like to see where my great-great-grandmother's portrait had been painted. The following Saturday, Dr. Blackwood took me to visit Thomas's old studio. The room was small and filled with natural light from tall windows. I could imagine Margaret sitting here while Thomas painted her portrait. In one corner of the room, there was a display case with some of Thomas's original brushes and paints. Dr. Blackwood showed me a journal entry where Thomas had described Margaret's personality. He wrote that she was brave, intelligent, and determined to build a better life for her daughter. Thomas had respected Margaret's strength. He had seen many young women in difficult situations, but Margaret had impressed him with her dignity and hope for the future. Standing in that studio, I felt connected to my family history for the first time in my life. I understood that Margaret's courage had made my life possible. She had traveled alone to a new country, survived scandal and hardship, and created opportunities for her descendants. Dr. Blackwood and I decided to work together to finish restoring Margaret's portrait properly. We wanted to display it in the Philadelphia Museum so other people could learn about Irish immigrant families. I also decided to research other hidden portraits in the museum's collection. Perhaps Thomas Blackwood had painted other immigrants whose stories deserved to be told. Over the next month, I discovered 3 more hidden portraits under other paintings. Each portrait showed a different person from Thomas's time period. Each painting told a story about families who had struggled to build new lives in Philadelphia. Dr. Blackwood helped me document these discoveries. We wrote articles for historical journals. We gave presentations at local universities. We wanted people to understand that many families had hidden histories waiting to be uncovered. The museum decided to create a permanent exhibition about Thomas Blackwood and the immigrant families he had painted. They asked me to be the curator of the exhibition. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I had found my family's story. I had discovered my connection to Philadelphia's history. I had learned that my quiet, rootless life had been built on generations of courage and determination. Every morning now, I make my tea and look at a photograph of Margaret's portrait on my kitchen table. I wear her silver locket every day. I think about her strength and her hope for the future. I still live alone, but I no longer feel alone. I carry my family's story with me. I understand that I am part of something larger than my own small life. Dr. Blackwood has become a close friend. He continues to help me research my family tree. We have discovered relatives living in other states, and even some still in Ireland. Last month, I received a letter from a woman in Boston who had seen our museum exhibition online. She recognized Margaret's face because she looks exactly like her own grandmother. We are planning to meet next spring. I have learned that family is not just about the people you know. Family is about the connections that exist across time and distance, waiting to be discovered. Now I understand why I became an art restorer. I was meant to uncover hidden stories. I was meant to bring the past back to life. I was meant to find Margaret's portrait and learn about the woman whose strength runs through my blood. Every day, I work on restoring old paintings with new purpose. I know that each canvas might contain someone's lost history. I know that every face I uncover might help another person find their family's story. As I finish my work each evening, I touch the silver locket around my neck and think about Margaret's journey. She left Ireland with nothing but hope and courage. She gave her daughter a better life, and that gift has passed down through 4 generations to me. I no longer feel like I am floating through life without roots. I have found my place in the long chain of women who refused to give up, who protected their families, and who preserved love across the centuries.
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment and tell me what you thought about Eleanor's incredible discovery. Your engagement helps other English learners fin.